Well, hello, DCO Nation. Welcome to Dead Calm Outdoors Radio. This is the show where the tide set the tone and the bite tells the story. We're diving into everything saltwater inshore kayak fishing, from lures and locations to weather, water, and winning tactics. If it helps you hook up on more fish, we're talking about it right here. So grab your paddle, check your drag, and here we go. Well, welcome DCO Nation to Dead Calm Outdoors right here on the Outdoor Radio Network. But before we get started, I want to connect with you guys. So head over to my social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify. If you search Dead Calm Outdoors, you'll find me. Follow me. But I want to see your guys' kayak rigs. I want to see what you guys are catching. I want to see your setup. So let's connect. Go to Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, search Dead Calm Outdoors, and we will get connected. But guys, I tell you what, I am super excited to have Captain Jason Burton with Murrells Inlet Fishing Charters on tonight. Captain Jason, I really appreciate you jumping on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, thank you. We're going to talk flounder. So I really wanted to kind of hit this topic because our friends to the north in North Carolina, their flounder season is about to open. So September 1st to September 14th or something like that. I can't exactly remember. They have a short season because they're being restricted on what they can harvest on flounder. But you know, I want to pick your brain on flounder fishing. But
Perfect.
Before we get to the tactics, I want you to tell us about what happened, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I know you've told this story probably 100 times, but I want to hear it.
Yeah. So what he's referring to is I've been fishing a long time. I've been running charters for 19 years. I'm very fortunate, 19 years. Couple weeks ago, got to land the biggest flounder in the history of my career. My PB, I know it was one of the biggest ones caught in Murrells Inlet recently, and the story behind it is absolutely crazy. It's wild because we were on a stretch of time where we really wasn't catching a whole lot of fish. It's August, it's hot, water temperature's hot, so the expectations were really low. I had 4 people on the boat. Had a young couple, probably in their 30s, and then they brought their grandparents, so probably upper 70s, lower 80s, and this is where it gets really entertaining. So we go back in this little area, and I fished here 1,000 times, and so we cast out there, and we catch a couple little flounder, and we're like, okay, we're kind of getting some momentum going now. Just to back up a little bit, this area is super shallow. Probably 2.5 to 3 feet on one side. It's got a little 4 to 5 foot drop off on the other side. And I kept telling my people, I said, with it being hot, I bet these flounder are deep in the holes. And the guy's like, okay, well, I'm going to let them fish the good spots, and I'm going to fish over here on the sandbar. And I kept telling him, I'm like, they probably aren't sitting shallow. So I turn around, and he has set the hook, and I just see water flopping up and down. And I don't see what it is. And the reel takes off. Goes straight to deep water. Well, my first thought was, okay, the way that it took off, this has got to be a stingray. I'm thinking, like, my level of concern here is about a 1. I'm like, oh, we got a stingray,
Okay, yeah, right.
So it's running, it goes to deeper water. And to back it up a little bit, one of our teammates, Chris Regan, who's been on here before, he's sitting beside me. So he's like, hey, what do you have? I saw the explosion, and I said, I don't know, but we're going to play this out. So kind of reeling the same thing. Guy gets it up, and I see like a little silhouette of something, brown, but I don't see what it is. And boom, off and running again. And I'm thinking, okay, at this point, I haven't even picked up a net yet. And I'm normally, I would say, fairly calm on my charters. I get excited. You got to remember, it's a young couple. 30 years old, and we got grandma and grandpa in the back.
Oh no.
So this thing, he pulls it up on the sandbar, and I see what it is and absolutely lose my mind. I'm yelling profanity. at this fish. No profanity on here, but I'm like, oh my God, you look at this. And I just turn around and grandma was looking at me and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And she goes, clearly this is something important. So run over there, grab the net. I mean, I'm in pure panic mode. I grab the net, fish comes out just like a bad basketball player. He bounces off the rim, runs back in the hole, comes back. The second time it realizes that I don't even know if he can fit in the net. And so I finally got kind of his head in the net and grabbed him by the tail and literally slung him in the boat. And I must have hit 2 of them on the way back and hooting and hollering and freaking out. But I mean, just absolute insanity. But I will never forget seeing that fish, losing my mind and turning around. And grandma was just like, it's okay, honey. It's okay.
So,
anyway.
So at what point did you realize it was a flounder?
Probably halfway through the fight. And that's what the problem is. We didn't put 2 and 2 together because we saw the splash. And normally, I mean, a flounder will not strip 20, 30 yards of drag like that. So you kind of assume, hey, it's a stingray or something. But when he came up, I saw the dots on his tail. And I mean, if they had blood pressure things attached to me, I would imagine they'd have hit the panic button. Because I mean, I just pure panic. Because I'm excited. I have kind of forgotten that these people are here. All I know is the biggest flounder I've ever seen is right there. And it's like, I don't want to lose him. And, the fact that he bounced off the rim like a bad basketball player, I mean, just created more panic because then, it was wild. But we got him in the boat. And, I mean, good thing about it is the angler that was fishing, he had been chasing these big fish on numerous charters. He didn't tell me any of this till afterwards. So it was somebody who really, really appreciated and knew what it was.
Oh, nice.
So that made it really, really nice. We caught a nice one, not quite that big. We caught an 8-pounder a couple years ago.
Uh-huh.
And it was the lady's first flounder, and she didn't even get excited. She just assumed they all were that big.
Holy
so it kind of
cow,
took away
no
from
kidding.
the excitement. But this one was it was wild. It was a little. We got back to the dock. I'll finish out the story of the big one.
Yeah, definitely.
We got back to the dock, and of course, my dream fish is 30 inches, 10 pounds, either one. So we measure him. He's 29 and a half. We pull the scale out. I look at the scale, and I'm just like, really? 9.84. We pull another scale out, 9.85. And I'm thinking my whole time, like, you got this close?
Oh, man.
So to finish it up, we got the fish all straight, got it, taken care of and all that. And as soon as the people left, I opened the fish box, and there was a croaker in my eyes that he had spit up. So that was like,
oh, no kidding.
It's almost like a way of saying, hey, you got to go back to finding your dream fish, because this one, he would have been 10 pounds.
He would have been 10 pounds. Yeah. So how big was the croaker? I mean, he's had to be like 6-8 inches. He had to be nice.
I would guess 4 to 5 ounces at least. Maybe 3 at the. I mean, he was. And I'm just thinking the whole time, if that's not ironic, I don't know what is.
Shove that thing back in there and let's get another weight. So
awesome.
What were you using to catch him? What did you catch him on?
So I caught him on a 1/4 ounce chartreuse jig head, tipped with a medium finger mullet.
Okay.
We had been fishing artificial in this area and having absolutely no luck. And then I just tried using mud minnows, which is our dominant bait, outside of mullet season.
Yeah.
And I just talked to one of my teammates, and they were saying that they had noticed that the bite seemed to be very favorable for the mullet. So we had just through the net caught some mullet, no big mullet, nothing, no small one, or just a perfect medium one. But the way that fish hit, I can only imagine when he cast it on that bar, he must have landed so close to it that it just reacted. Because I mean, it was pretty violent.
Right.
And I don't really think he worked the bait or did anything. He just kind of cast it out there, and then the water, so he had to hit it right in front of him. It was one of those like 1 in a million shots or something.
Right. Man, that is absolutely incredible. 9.85 pound, 29.5 inch flounder. I mean, Guys, you have got to go over and to his Instagram account and look at this fish. What's your Insta? Tell everybody your social media so they can go over there and look at this fish. It's when they talk doormat, it's not a doormat, it's a blanket. It's a flounder blanket. This thing is huge.
Yeah, my Instagram is just at excuse me, at Captain Jason Burton. Okay. But it was nice, because we have a lot of guides that run, off the same dock as us. And, it was nice because I think everybody came by to look at the fish, and it was kind of like, it was neat. Yeah, it's not something you see every day. I mean, I never would expect that in August. Maybe October. We see some bigger ones in there, but for the heat of August, never in a billion years would have expected that.
Yeah. And really, I don't want to say it's common, but it's not uncommon, because didn't somebody last year get a big flounder like that? Was it a 30-inch last year?
We had one that was close to 30.
And
it was 10 pounds. But I just had this conversation the other day, going back to what you were talking about, North Carolina's closure. If it's related, it has to be somewhat related. But I've been fishing here my whole life, and I've seen bigger flounder more this year and the last year than I ever have. And I almost wonder if it's related to the fact that North Carolina is closed. Are some of those big females, migrating down our way, where before they might have been harvested, in North Carolina.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. It really does. So, but I tell you what, we have such a unique fishery. I think we have some of the best flounder fishing between North Carolina, South Carolina, and probably Georgia. The flounder fishing is really second to none. I mean, people come down here to flounder fish. And is there a reason why? Are we like in Flounder Alley or something like that? I mean,
I agree. I mean, obviously I grew up here and we're a little biased here, but I've traveled a lot of places, and that's what we're known for. We have great other fish, don't get me wrong, but our flounder fish, it's just like the perfect combination. I don't know if it's the fact that our inlet has no freshwater influence whatsoever, minus rain runoff. If that salinity is just what they're looking for, or maybe the short distance from the ocean. But I know that a lot of flounder that we've caught that have been tagged have come from North Carolina and Virginia. So, if these flounder are migrating, in the full moons and new moons, are we a roadside hotel? Are these fish just ducking in the inlet, hanging out for a little while, getting something to eat, and then they're off to their next destination? What amazes me is our inlet's so small and gets so much pressure, but it produces fish every single day. I mean, it's, outside of large amount of rain or cold fronts, our fishery is very, very consistent.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I tell you what, guys, we're coming up to the end of our first segment. This goes by so quick. Don't go anywhere. We're talking with Captain Jason Burton, and you're listening to Deadcom Outdoors right here on the Outdoor Radio Network. Well, welcome back, DCO Nation, to Deadcom Outdoors. We are talking with Captain Jason Burton, the flounder pounder, with Murrells Inlet Fishing Charter. So, Jason, let's jump right in. We've got one segment left to do, but with flounder season really kicking off there in North Carolina and people still coming down for early fall flounder fishing, let's talk rod and reel setups. What should people be throwing? What do you usually throw to target flounder?
Yeah. So my standard setup be a smaller spinning reel, like a 3000 series, 2500, whatever your favorite brand is. Rod and reel, usually using a medium action rod with a fast tip. I think my favorite rod I'm using like a 6 to 12 pound right now. What you want is you want a little bit of backbone in that rod, but you also want a very limber tip. The fast tip, I believe, gives you a little bit better. Where some people, if they go with the extra fast, you just don't quite have that action on the rod. But those are the perfect setups to where you could feel that constant contact with the bottom, which is so crucial in flounder fishing.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. So what are you using for line, and are you using a leader?
Yes. So my standard setup, 15-pound Power Pro is what I use. And then usually, depending on what I'm tying, anywhere from, I would say, as small as 12 inches to maybe 3 foot of fluorocarbon leader, usually sticking with that 15 pounds. Sometimes I'll drop down to 10 or 12 if the water's crystal clear.
Okay.
And mainly, just trying to match everything up. I want, a rod and reel at a certain weight class. I want my line at a certain weight class. I want my leader at the same weight class. So, when you do get that good fish and you put a lot of pressure on them, you don't want the weakest link breaking.
Right. And you almost kind of answered the next question that I had was, do you think flounder or leader shy, or do you just go lighter because it's clearer water?
I think flounder, a lot of people read into trout and redfish. I think flounder are a lot more intelligent than people think. I think under murky water or any kind of dark water or anything, I think it does not matter at all. But if I'm fishing, one of my favorite spots near the ocean, or maybe a higher tide, and we got an east wind and the water's crystal clear, I've seen to where the fish will, swim up behind the baits in shallow water, and then for whatever reason turn. So I just assume that they're seeing my leader. This may not be the case. There's not a lot of proven facts, when people are gigging or trolling, with their small outboards. Obviously they're making a bunch of racket running these flounder over and they don't spook. So maybe it's just me thinking more into it. But I like to go 15-pound leader. And like I said, if it's crystal clear and I'm just not getting the bites, first thing I'll do is downsize either my hooks, my jigs, or my line just to see if it makes a difference. If it doesn't, it never hurts to try.
Right. So we got the setup, we got our rod and reel ready to go, we got braid, we got leader. What are you putting on the end of that? Let's talk artificials first, and then we'll go on to live bait.
Perfect. Yeah. Artificials, I would say what I want to do with artificials is I want to match the hatch. When I go out on the water, I want my head to be on a swivel, paying attention to everything that's around me. You've got shorebirds, that tells you have bait. Once you establish what bait it is, then you want to try to match the hatch. If I'm seeing a lot of finger mullet or mud minnows, I'm going to throw a paddle tail. I'm a real big fan of small to medium paddle tails, 3-inch, 4-inch. Color to me, matters under some circumstances, but I think the silhouette of the bait is more important. Now, obviously, if you have super dirty water, you need to throw, darker baits. If you have clear water, you want natural baits. But that's my standard setup. Now, if I am seeing shrimp pop on the shore or I notice a feed, I'm immediately going to go with the shrimp, whether that's, Prawn Star from Z-Man, Voodoo, Savage makes a good shrimp. So, but the main thing for me is I just want to get the food to them that is surrounding. So, but if you don't see that, typically you go in search mode. So I may throw 10 casts with a paddle tail. If I don't get the reaction bites I want, I'll throw 10 casts with a shrimp profile. If I don't get the reaction I want, then I may throw something like a trout trick or something just, different, something, a slow moving bait, just something to see, if you can establish what they want, you can take what you learn at spot A and you can go to spot B and apply it.
Right. Does weight matter?
The main thing, weight does matter. It depends on what you're doing. Like if I am fishing in a shallow creek, I may be using a 3/16 ounce, like Texas eye or something. Where if I'm trying to catch flounder at the tip of the jetties where it's 18 to 20 feet, I may be using, a half ounce, jig head trying to get the bait down to the bottom. You need to use whatever weight you need to make contact with the bottom. If the current's faster, use more. If it's lighter, use less. But you don't want so much lead that your bait is, just plopped on the bottom. I like that fine line of tapping the bottom, not necessarily just planting it on the bottom.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, I was chatting with Captain Jonathan Moss on the Captain's Log TV show, and and he was asking me about flounder fishing, and I said, if you don't have it right there in their face, they're not going to hit it. They're not going to swim up
No.
4 feet if you're in 8 foot of water to come up and get this thing. Now I've seen them chase it down, but a foot or two off the bottom.
Yeah.
But you got to be in their face with that bait. But
yeah, that's what I always tell people. I mean, the way I look at flounder, there's 2 types of flounder. There's the flounder that are sitting stationary, you got to bring them a bait, and there's the ones that are moving and coming in with the tides. Either way, they're 12 inches off the top. Now, that being said, sometimes, their eyes are on the top of their head. Sometimes they do want that bait 8 to 10 inches off the bottom. They don't, there's certain times where a drop shot rig can produce fish when, something on the bottom doesn't,
I never even thought about that. Never even thought about that. And I know guys who have caught flounder on top water too. Now it's been, on the shallower side of the, the creeks or whatnot. But yeah, they say, these flounder come up and just explode on the top. Have you ever got one on top water?
I have never gotten one on top water, but I was with a buddy of mine who got one. It was on the north end of Murrells Inlet. And that's the coolest thing ever because, they actually pretty athletic. This thing almost like came out the water, like a shorebird, and kind of was like, whoa, what was that? But like you said, that's the misconception too. A lot of people are like, oh, flounder deep water, current adjacent. Like they'll go shallow. I've caught some absolute studs in a foot of water. So if you throw a top water bite or top water bait, that's in their zone. They're only going to come up a foot, but if they're only in a foot, boom, game on,
Right. Okay, so now we've got rod and reel. We know what we're going to throw. So one of the most asked questions that I get is, well, what's the best tide? So is there a tide outgoing better, incoming better? What's your thoughts on that?
See, that's tough. I think for, probably half of
I didn't bring you on here for the easy questions, okay?
I'd say half of my career, I knew if you booked a charter with me and it was the falling tide, I knew I was going to have a great trip. And the incoming tide, I used to struggle a lot. And, but there's pros and cons. I will say this. I don't think there's a bad tide for flounder. The only tide I don't like is no tide. The ebb tide, high and low, are tough. But they create opportunities. Flounder typically are facing into the current. When you get a tide change, most flounder are going to get up and move and reposition. If nothing else, I just picture them turning around and looking the other way. And, so my favorite tide is still probably mid-tide falling, being able to fish creek mouse and fish, any kind of rips around structure that's created is good. I really, really like the first hour of incoming. The mid-tide rising, I kind of struggle sometimes with, but there's also opportunities because as you start to expand your horizon and fish in further back into creeks, your mid-tide rising, you're finding areas that are emulating low tide. Your places that are dry for half the tide, and all of a sudden that water rushes in, those fish are looking to rush in too to, pick up on fish. So there's opportunities. I've learned, follow the tide out, follow it back in, and you can push as far back as you want to go at high tide where you can at low tide. So each tide presents, opportunities.
Yeah. And, and I've caught plenty of flounder on that slack tide too. I think, when redfish and trout are shutting down, I'll actually go target flounder because I've caught flounder at that slack tide. So I'm like, well, let's go over here to a couple of creek mouths. Let's hit over this side. And, so yeah, absolutely. I've caught them, all tides whenever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so we got only about a couple minutes left. So I want to hit real quick locations, not like, hey, go to Bob's Dock. I don't want to go to, any GPS, but where are you kind of looking? If you're cruising, you're like, oh, hey, there's a spot over there.
I will tell you this. If you're fishing an area you're not familiar, any small creek mouth that dumps out into a bigger creek mouth, from a visual standpoint, I call them rips. Anywhere you have two currents colliding, if you have a current coming out of a creek hitting a main channel, usually you'll see where the currents collide. So Shorebirds. The biggest thing is shorebirds tell the tales. They're there because the bait's there. If the bait's there, the fish are there. So if you go down a creek and there's 9 egrets on one side, and you go to 2 other creeks and there's no birds, use those birds to kind of help you say, okay, well, they're there feeding, something else is feeding. Hopefully, we're the last part of the puzzle. But it just all depends. Any kind of current break. If you're riding around, look for depth change, sudden depth change, and just understand when that depth change is relevant. If you find a 3 or 4 foot drop off, those are areas that, when that tide first starts rushing back in, they present a place for the flounder to sit there and just ambush stuff. They want to sit down in little holes and let the conveyor belt of bait come to them from the tide, and it gives them easy feeding opportunities. So I would look for rips, shorebirds, drop-offs, and oyster bars. I think oyster bars are overrated, or underrated. Oyster bars create current division. So when the current hits the oyster bar, it has to go to the right or left of it. That creates little, back spins and little eddies that are prime feeding zones as well.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So real quick, tell everybody how they can book a trip with you and follow you on social media.
Sure. Yeah. Social media, Instagram, I'm at Captain Jason Burton. Facebook is just Jason Burton. Our company is Murrells Inlet Fishing Charters. You can go to our website at mifcfishingcharters.com. Book your trip there. Request me. I drive the boat Fishzilla. So come down and let's go catch some fish.
Yeah. And that boat is absolutely awesome. You guys need to come down here, book him up, get on that boat, maybe get on a PB flounder. Captain Jason, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. It's always great to talk with you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you. So remember, guys, conservation starts with you. Release a fish for someone else to enjoy. And you've been listening to Dead Calm Outdoors right here on the Outdoor Radio Network.